Okay, we got a fire hose of news coming out, so this podcast is going to be mostly about the things and the events that have been happening over the last few months. It's not about the Iran war, and it's not about Kristi Noem's firing, but let me just say on the front end of this, as a little bit of a recording for the purpose of this podcast, because I had to do this separately. Kristi Noem's firing doesn't mean shit. Mark Wayne Mullen is going to be just as much of a figurehead as she was. He's just male instead of female. He's just as stupid. He's just as incompetent, and he's going to do exactly what Trump says all the fucking time. Yes, sir. Whatever you say, sir. You're the greatest president ever, sir. Yeah, and the fact that she's gone, I'm sure for the people at DHS is great. She sounds like an extremely fucking toxic, horrible person. But the actual events on the ground are not going to change much. DHS isn't really being funded right now, and maybe that'll change with Mark Wayne Mullen taking over as some sort of compromise. But the reality is that Tom Tillis, John Kennedy, these people grilling her, this was bullshit theater. These people, Tom Tillis is retiring. He never found his balls until he decided to retire. So for all intents and purposes, his opinion means jack shit, and the fact that he's just now figuring out that she shot her dog, even though it was in a book that came out several years ago, is fucking bananas, because he confirmed her. He confirmed her to be a DHS secretary in the first place. And John Kennedy sounds like he was working in concert with Stephen Miller to oust her because she blamed him for everything that was going on in Minnesota, and he didn't like that very much. And then Donald Trump was pissed that she blamed him for all this shit with the $200 whatever million in ads that was basically just a big PR campaign for her. This is all bullshit. It's not real accountability. Without at least two-thirds to three-fourths of the Republican Party finding their fucking brain and telling Trump to fuck off, we're not going to get out of this. The Iran war is just the beginning. And just if oil hits $200 a barrel, shit is really going to hit the fan. So this isn't real accountability. None of this shit really means anything. Mark Wayne Mullen is going to be just as bad as Kristi Noem, just in different ways. And do not expect this to get better anytime soon. It's going to get worse before it gets better. I take no pleasure in saying that, but I'm also trying to be a realist here. All right, here's the show. Welcome to episode 3 of the Mad Mod Pod. I'm your host, Ken Thompson. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about the inevitability of ICE and Border Patrol murdering people in the streets, the fact that we have a federal police state for all intents and purposes, and Trump is explicitly trying to nationalize the elections. First, let's talk about the tragic murders of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy, two innocent civilians who were executed in the street while trying to exercise their inalienable constitutional rights to observe and film ICE carrying out their unlawful deportations. The tangible video evidence of these murders, and especially Alex's, with what can only be accurately described as a public summary execution, I hope are finally exposing this lawless fascist administration in ways that I think had not broken through to the general public before. And as I predicted in a conversation with a friend of mine after Trump got inaugurated for the second time, this whole attempt at rounding everyone up who is not here legally, never mind those who are in the country legally but awaiting a court hearing to determine whether or not they can stay, this entire attempt is nothing more than a fascist fool's errand and a useful ruse to further push us towards federal lawlessness and totalitarianism. It always was. It was totally and predictably inevitable that as a nation we would begin to lose our humanity in this process. And even considering that Trump might attempt to handle immigration in any sort of moral and ethical way, after everything that we know about his personality, after everything that we know about the people that he has put in his inner circle, after everything that we know about his track record, going back years, decades, about the way he's campaigned on mass deportations leading up to the 2024 election, to actually think it would not be like this is so damn naive, it is nauseating.
It's been the cornerstone policy of Donald Trump's 2024 campaign.
We will not be conquered. We will reclaim our sovereignty.
A mission to deport millions of undocumented migrants living in the United States.
The largest deportation
in the history of our country.
History of the United States, American history.
A promise that's landing with his base. Mass deportations now signs prominent at this year's RNC, but one that's heavy on rhetoric and light on specifics. Former President Trump saying at an Arizona rally he wants to hire 10,000 new border agents.
We need the agents.
But details thin on how they'd carry out what would be the largest and most logistically complicated immigration operation in our country's history. One group estimating such a mass deportation operation could end up costing $88 billion per year. That's more than 10 times ICE's annual budget. A former Trump administration Border Patrol chief and ICE director telling us the plan would require an unprecedented beefing up of personnel and resources to increase deportations to potentially millions in a matter of months. The recent peak was 1.5 million removals and expulsions in fiscal year 2022.
Now just look at that shit. What the hell else did people really expect? Oh, that's right. They didn't expect anything because they weren't paying attention at all prior to the election. And the aggressively fascist way this is being carried out is also going to contribute to the backsliding of our economy as fewer immigrants take the risk to come here for employment opportunities. Not to mention Trump's economic policies like blanket and retaliatory tariffs, as well as the further weaponization of the justice system in general, and we'll actually see if Trump follows the Supreme Court's recent ruling on tariffs or not. I have my doubts. Whether the fascist MAGA elites want to admit it or not, we have benefited greatly as a nation on the actual physical backs of cheap, many times undocumented immigrant labor. These are people who do most of our most intense and backbreaking labor. These are the people who do most of our most intense, backbreaking labor because they are coming here seeking freedom and prosperity by being in our country and working. They are the ones picking our fruits and vegetables, mowing our lawns. They're building our homes and commercial buildings. They're cleaning our homes. They're cleaning our hospitals. They're cleaning our factories and hotel rooms. They're stocking our stores, manning our slaughterhouses, and in general doing basically all of the other difficult manual labor that Americans generally won't do and machine automation can't yet do. People who are here illegally via the misdemeanor offense of crossing the border once, who have been living here ever since, who are lawfully contributing to society with their taxes and their labor, who are not a threat to public safety, and who have not been arrested for other crimes unrelated to crossing the border once. I believe they should be allowed to stay. They should have a pathway to citizenship that does include a civil penalty but not deportation, and allow these people the dignity to work and live in the country peacefully. Many have come here to escape real oppression in their home countries, and they are seeking asylum in our democratic, rules-based nation. The focus of border security at this point should be on the actual border and less on the interior. Interior deportation should be mainly focused on actual criminals. If an undocumented person can't and or won't follow the law, then of course all of the sane people among us agree that they need to be deported back to their country of origin because they have demonstrated that they are not interested in assimilating into the general Western culture of our society, and they have rejected being part of our modern civilized country. However, here is the really crucial part. It must be done lawfully and with due process and constitutional rule of law at the core of all operations. It must be targeted in a way as to not interfere with the operations and wishes of local authorities or legitimate public safety. I know, all of that sounds like it should be a given, and it would be if we had a moral, ethical leader in charge, or moral, ethical people around him. But there are no givens with people like Trump and his sycophants running the show, because with these assholes, cruelty is always the point, even if the execution of that cruelty is so incompetent that it makes you question the very concept of reality itself.
Hey Viv, these mass deportations are going to help out real Americans, right?
I'm going to stop you right there. First off, if watching families being ripped apart does not appeal to your humanity, let me try and appeal to you financially, because these mass ICE deportations are bad for the economy. So while undocumented immigrants actually make up a really small portion of the overall workforce, they are overrepresented in jobs that you do not want. Things that have little benefits, long hours, backbreaking work with no pay. For example, about 42% of the agricultural workforce, 23% of the construction workforce are undocumented. And let's be real, these are self-reported numbers, so those are probably light. But the short of it all is that the food that you eat and the home that you live in was probably brought to you by someone who is an immigrant. The Made in America for Americans tagline, yeah, it's actually made by immigrants. Not only are these mass ICE deportations going to result in a tax revenue loss of over $1 trillion every single year, get ready to wait longer at your favorite neighborhood restaurant. You're going to see a shortage in Uber and Lyft drivers, delivery order people, and you are going to see prices for meat, seafood, dairy, and produce all go up at your grocery store. If you are not deeply disturbed watching unidentifiable masked officers throw hardworking people into unmarked vans, I plead with you to assess why that might be. And ultimately, if you still can't come up with a reason to care, I ask you to be selfish and know that what is bad for these people you don't seem to care about is also bad for you.
Democrats, for the sake of the country itself, cannot ever give the issue of immigration to Republicans ever again. Going forward, any future Democratic president cannot afford to ignore immigration enforcement. People attempting to illegally cross the border can and should be stopped humanely and lawfully because we as a country and a society get to determine who enters our country and who doesn't. We should also be working with the Mexican government, as well as the governments of the countries in Central and South America, to reduce the number of people migrating to the United States in the first place. This is something Biden and Harris sort of attempted, but they never really used the full leverage of our federal government to push these countries to take the responsibility necessary for the internal chaos causing people to flee in the first place. And politically, for us on the left, Democrats cannot ignore the flow of people coming here illegally, believing that some future immigration legislation yet to be passed will solve this problem and that they have time to kick the can down the road. They do not. That is not going to happen, and it is not going to happen because Republicans love to use immigration as an ongoing boogeyman for every election cycle. Just like how they love to remind us of the migrant caravans in the months leading up to our midterm and presidential elections when a Democrat is in the White House, and then as soon as the election is over, Republicans mysteriously forget all about the caravans. The most recent major example of this was only 2 short years ago when James Lankford, a very conservative Republican senator from Oklahoma, co-wrote the bipartisan border security bill with Senators Chris Murphy and Kyrsten Sinema, only to have Senate Republicans tank the bill because Trump wanted immigration as an important wedge issue for the election.
Here in Washington, a landmark $118 billion bipartisan plan to tighten the southern border and help pay for the war in Ukraine has collapsed. And tonight there's little sense and little hope that Congress can find a new way to respond to either crisis. CBS's Scott MacFarlane has the fallout of a frantic 72 hours of dysfunction on Capitol Hill.
As migrants continue to cross, Congress is frozen in place.
It shows how broken Washington, D.C. is.
A U.S. Senate plan to stiffen border security, tighten requirements for asylum, and nearly shutter the border during spikes of migrant crossings had the endorsement of Senate leaders and a National Border Patrol Union.
My Republican colleagues changed their minds. Turns out they want all talk and no action.
The motion is not agreed
But it
to.
collapsed in a vote late today, in part because former President Trump opposed it.
Americans are ticked off that this is not resolved.
The impasse is a blow also to cities like Chicago, where Alderman Byron Sitcho Lopez is helping the city respond to thousands of migrants bust from the border.
The federal government has exacerbated and worsening the issue at the border.
The Senate today then shifted to a new plan with tens of billions of dollars to help Ukraine and Israel, but no border changes. It'll face stiff resistance in the House.
I mean, this place is just chaos, right?
The failures happen a day after House Republicans came up one vote short in trying to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Was it a surprise how it played out?
I don't think it was a surprise. It was more of a disappointment.
Texas Democrat Al Green, hospitalized near the Capitol after intestinal surgery, made a surprise appearance on the floor, casting the deciding vote.
You had to sign a waiver to get out of the hospital to vote?
It was an acknowledgement that I understood that there could be some consequences that could be adverse to my best interest to do this.
The House could vote as early as next week on a second attempt to impeach Secretary Mayorkas, further inflaming an already fiery and gridlocked Congress. Nora?
Now, why solve a problem when you can use the problem with uninformed voters to win an election? The 2024 Senate Border Security Bill, formerly known as the Emergency National Security Supplemental Appropriations Act, and later the Border Act of 2024, was a failed bipartisan bill aimed at significantly tightening U.S. immigration laws, something so many voters said that they wanted, speeding up the asylum processing, and increasing funding for border enforcement. It was introduced in February of 2024, and it sought to curb higher border encounter rates, but was ultimately voted down in May of 2024 by the Republicans in the Senate. Now, this is reporting from The Guardian. The 43-50 vote was far short of the necessary 60 votes needed to advance the legislation. Republicans, who have repeatedly demanded Democrats act on the border, abandoned the compromise proposal at the behest of Donald Trump, who saw it as a political gift for Biden's re-election chances. Now, none of that would have mattered nearly as much had Biden made border security a serious priority when he first came into office in a way that would be sustainable for the duration of his term, and regardless of if Congress got its act together. The alternative was, and still is, to cede this issue to Republicans, and Democrats must never cede this issue to Republicans, ever.
You're going to have to seal up those borders.
He made immigration the centerpiece of his campaign.
We're like a garbage can for the world.
And when he's back in the White House, President-elect Trump has promised to immediately crack down with mass deportations of people in the country illegally.
On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history. Going to get the criminals out.
To do that, Trump has said he'll mobilize the military and local police. But he's offered few specific details on how it will actually work. With 11 million undocumented people living in the U.S., the process would be expensive and complicated. One report puts the price tag at an estimated $88 billion a year to hire new ICE agents, build detention camps, and carry out legal processing. Ron Vitello was acting ICE director during the first Trump administration.
I'm sure it's very expensive. It is something that's worth doing to preserve the rule of law, to order what's going on, the chaos at the southwest border, and to preserve an immigration system that has integrity in the United States. You have to set rules and you have to enforce those rules.
Trump says mass deportations are justified by a 2-centuries-old law. But some legal experts on the left say Trump's interpretation is way off.
It is not lawful to use this centuries-old statute to deport people. It was for a very specific purpose when a foreign government invades this country. That is not what's happening with immigrants here.
Trump made immigration a major focus of his first administration with mixed success. He built part of a wall on the U.S. border with Mexico and separated families who crossed illegally. Now, in places like North Carolina, this family lives in fear they could be separated. Jenny's husband, Isabella, and Mackenzie's dad is undocumented.
I was afraid that one day they would come home and he wouldn't be here.
So he lives in the shadows. The family asks we don't show his face or share his name because they worry he could be deported.
I don't make any trouble. I just go work and coming home. My family is everything for me.
Tonight, millions of families bracing for what's next. Tom Llamas, NBC News.
We must control and protect the border, both for the sake of immigration itself and also because immigration policies that the country feels are too unrestrictive are destabilizing for the society. This takes us back to David Frum's 2019 article that I have mentioned before, If Liberals Won't Enforce Borders, Fascists Will, an issue which transcends the United States and applies to all Western democracies. The beauty of the article's title to me is that it quickly and precisely points out that there is no secret option number C where you can have a policy of letting large numbers of people into the country without the consent of the majority of the country's home population and without the immigrant population being properly assimilated into the country on a reasonable time frame. If there is a perception that the country's benefits and resources are being given to immigrants instead of the country's citizens, there will be problems. That is just a fact of human nature. If it is perceived that the immigrant population isn't properly being assimilated into the society, there will be problems. That is just a fact of human nature. And human beings are evolutionarily very attuned to what they perceive as fair. We have been seeing this problem across Europe right now, and it is just a fact of human nature that countries cannot absorb immigrant populations faster than they can be assimilated, or a large percentage of the country's population will start to push back with resentment and far-right political leaders. Leaders that I assure you will be far worse than having to enforce the border as liberals. This is something Biden failed to understand or tackle head-on until his final year in office, hoping that Congress would pass meaningful immigration reform and avoiding having to deal with immigration via executive orders until it became too much of an issue to ignore. At that point, though, it was too late. It was way too late. And Democrats as a party lost the trust of the American people on the issue of immigration. And because of immigration and a few other main issues, they were willing to give Trump another chance.
A mother gets shoved to the floor in front of her children.
This is the freedom.
Another man arrives at the immigration court for a routine check-in.
I'm from Winston.
But before he knows it, he's taken into custody. And then there's a woman, an American citizen, who is chased by ICE agents as she heads home after a trip to the grocery store. For the past year, social media has been flooded with videos of spectacular arrests across the United States. This is the result of one of Donald Trump's main campaign promises.
On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history.
And on this point, he has delivered. In just 1 year, at least 65,000 people have been taken into detention and more than 400,000 have been removed from the country. For his critics, Trump has built a full-scale deportation machine. How did he get there? How have the government's method changed? Who is being targeted? And what does all of this mean not just for migrants, but for the American society as a whole?
These are animals.
Yo, get your hands on my mom.
These masked, armed agents that you're seeing are not usual policemen. They are part of a federal agency, ICE, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Officially, their mission is to arrest criminal aliens. In practice, it is the force that carries out Donald Trump's immigration agenda. Over the past year, ICE has been carrying out these raids, and on the ground, its methods have changed.
My name is Jocelyn from Cicero. They don't have a warrant.
You don't have authority to arrest U.S. citizens.
For one, agents now have the authority to arrest anyone they deem suspicious without the risk of being prosecuted for racial profiling.
The Supreme Court basically allowed 4 factors to be used by ICE, such as accent, color of skin, location, and other things, to question a person about their lawful status.
They can also operate in unmarked vehicles, and they are not required to wear body cameras or to be identifiable.
No one here will identify themselves to me. They came into, you are not okay. This is not okay, and no one will identify themselves.
And perhaps the most significant shift is the locations where arrests are now taking place. ICE intervenes everywhere, including in places long considered safe.
The U.S. government used to recognize that there are places where enforcing immigration policy and detaining people would inflict unnecessary trauma, for example, at churches or at schools. And now that is a very common occurrence for parents to be detained when they are dropping their children off.
Go ahead and roll your window all the way down. Why? What's going on?
This doctor, for example, was driving his daughter to daycare when ICE agents pulled him over.
Roll your window all the way down.
Happy party.
Go ahead and roll your window down. You're in the window. Roll it down. Roll your window all the way down for me, please. Yeah. Do you have your ID on you? Please. I do, yeah. Yeah, can I see your ID? Yeah, that's funny.
After he dropped off his daughter, ICE agents broke his car window and arrested him. His wife is an American citizen, and he was waiting on final approval for a green card.
Yeah, but you're so understand.
Arrests are also taking place in courthouses, in immigration court, while people are doing routine checks. Most recently now, arrests are taking place while people are going through the lawful process, where they're appearing for their interviews, whether it be for their green card, their permanent residency interviews, their asylum interviews, things like that.
Me dicen que es muy peligroso, que si voy a la cita de pronto, ahí mismo me deportan.
In immigration court now, basically, to get into the courtroom, you have to walk a gauntlet through the hallway of armed, masked men in various forms of battle fatigue, in camouflage and looking like mercenaries, basically. You're not even sure what agency they're from. And you have to walk through them, just down the hallway. And you don't know if they're gonna grab you, if they're gonna grab your family member. There's not a rhyme or reason to who they choose. We don't know how they choose or why they choose certain people, or if they do it at random.
The American people have made it very clear, even those in the middle and on the moderate left. We do want immigration enforcement, and we do want border security enforcement. We, being the supposedly mature Western democracy that we have claimed to be, we just want the enforcement done humanely and in a way that doesn't violate due process or people's constitutional rights. We should have a high proverbial wall with a really big gate, as Thomas Friedman likes to say. The Obama administration deported somewhere around 3 million people during Obama's 8 years in office, earning him the nickname the Deporter-in-Chief. And in addition to formal removals from the interior, Obama turned away approximately 2.1 to 2.2 million more people at the border through a process known as returns. I am sure that it was difficult for Obama and his team to do this, because we, as a nation of immigrants, empathize with all of those people who are coming here to seek a better life. That's who we are as a nation. We are a nation of people coming here to seek a better life. But the alternative for Obama was to hand immigration as a policy and as an issue over to the Republicans, something Biden foolishly did in his term by not properly enforcing the border as needed from the second he was sworn in, and by not visiting several places along the border during his first few months in office, thus taking that talking point of him still not having visited the border off of the table for the Republicans. Why he did not do these things is beyond me, and Republicans hounded Biden on it until the public believed their narrative. Every single Democrat who gets elected and sworn in as president should recognize that border enforcement as an issue is larger than just immigration itself. It's about cultural assimilation, it's about what people perceive as fair, and it is about the fact that the very melting pot we call ourselves requires that when people come here, they are perceived to be melting. We do not need to deport everyone already here illegally who is following the law, assimilating into the country's culture, building a life here, and who are having families. It makes more sense to let them stay unless they pose a verifiable risk of some kind. It is a total waste of time and resources, and it is also absurd to think that you could round up 10 plus who the fuck knows how many million undocumented people here in only one presidential term, even if you try to do it humanely, which Trump is not doing, without losing yourself to fascism. And speaking of fascism, Stephen Miller wants 3,000 arrests for deportation a day, which is insane to think that we can do that without becoming a fascist police state. And even at 3,000 arrests a day, for every single day of Trump's second term, DHS would still only arrest and deport 4,380,000 people. So still not to the 10 million plus they say they want to go after. But ICE is buying up warehouses all over the country to supposedly house these people while they prepare for deportation. And at what point are we going to start calling them internment camps? The reports show that the conditions in these warehouses are already up and running are terrible. Worms and mold in the food, people unsurprisingly getting extremely sick, and in general, a sense that this administration does not give a single fuck about these people, likely not even seeing them as people.
This morning, pushback is growing over a federal plan to buy warehouses across the U.S. and convert them into immigration detention centers. Maryland becoming the first state to file a lawsuit against DHS and ICE. The state is arguing the administration did not conduct an environmental review or hold public comment as required by law after it purchased a facility in Washington County. According to multiple reports, roughly 70,000 people are currently in immigration detention centers in the U.S., compared to about 40,000 just 1 year ago. But this latest plan by the White House is also drawing GOP backlash. MS Now reporter Nick McCool has more.
Amid a national crackdown on undocumented immigration,
we are ramping up detention capabilities and removal flights daily.
The Trump administration rapidly bolstering its detention capacity. ICE now buying up warehouses across the country, expected to be transformed into detention centers with an estimated cost in the tens of billions. But as the Trump administration's detention efforts expand,
Free the children!
So too does the resistance to them. In a statement, the chairman of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops Committee on Migration said these plans are deeply troubling, adding the thought of holding thousands of families in massive warehouses should challenge the conscience of every American. In a letter earlier this month to DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, Republican Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi saying he supports immigration enforcement broadly, but that a proposed center in his state forecloses economic growth opportunities. Wicker later announcing those plans were abandoned. In New Hampshire, pushback to another proposed ICE facility. Democrat Senator Maggie Hassan confronting ICE's acting director in D.C. earlier this month.
So will ICE similarly cancel the New Hampshire project based on these concerns and local opposition?
No, ma'am.
And in Michigan, Crane's Detroit Business reporting DHS purchased a 261,000 square foot facility outside the Motor City, adding local leaders are disappointed they'll lose out on jobs and tax revenue expected from the Toyota supplier originally planned to occupy the building.
We gotta fight back! We gotta fight back!
All of this as a new poll from the Washington Post, ABC News, and Ipsos finds nearly 6 in 10 U.S. adults disapprove of the president's handling of immigration. One potential reason why may lie inside the detention facilities already in operation.
Immigration detention conditions across the country are degrading and inhumane.
Elora Mukherjee and her students at Columbia Law School represent some of the detainees at a detention facility in Dilley, Texas.
Children and families alike have told me that they do not have access to sufficient clean drinking water, that they do not have access to sufficient nutritious food, that they have found worms, bugs, and mold in their meals.
Mukherjee describes her clients being held in areas lit 24/7, making it hard to sleep. She says one of her clients, an 18-month-old girl named Amalia, was sick there for weeks, rushed to the hospital and diagnosed with RSV, COVID, pneumonia, and bronchitis. She and her parents have since been released from ICE detention.
What do you think that they are doing with all of these warehouses? We can't have health care, but we have money for DHS to spend God knows how much money on ICE detention center warehouses? Plus $10 billion stolen from taxpayers for Trump's border peace, another $40 billion to bail out Argentina, $10 billion directly to Trump from the IRS, and at least $1 billion to take Trump's Qatari bribe and turn it into Air Force One. Never mind the way his cabinet secretaries are blowing money on travel and expensive jets. You see a pattern? Do these so-called conservatives seem conservative to you? Also, and I'm not the first person to make this point, but it bears repeating, if Trump and his fascist followers actually wanted to be serious about immigration enforcement and in a way that truly motivated everyone who is here illegally to leave, but without intimidating and harassing the public or violating people's constitutional rights, they would fine any and all businesses with a steep penalty, $1,000 a day or whatever, for every person they are paying for labor who isn't here legally. The immigrants who have, in some cases, crossed most of Central America, usually on foot, are here to work. And if they do not have paying jobs to come here to, then they will leave and fewer people will come here moving forward because they know that nobody will hire them. Obviously, that is not what is happening and has never been what the corporations or the elite class actually wanted. They have wanted cheap labor. They have wanted employees who cannot easily reach out to any authorities if the company that is employing them is not following the law. There are clearly many corporations who would rather play this stupid both sides game where their leaders give campaign money to Republicans who don't support immigration, while at the same time taking advantage of the cheap labor that illegal immigration has created. And because Biden was too soft on immigration, and sorry progressives, but he was, it gave the right wing an authoritarian ideology an opening, which they have taken, and that is one of the reasons why we are here. And ironically, now the chickens are coming home to roost for all of those businesses who have historically depended on that cheap labor as well, and who likely didn't think that Trump would follow through on his mass deportation promises. I get that I have made this point before, but it's a theme that will run through most episodes for the foreseeable future, because I think it's at the root of everything we are dealing with. And at the root of this theme is the question, why are we here? Why are we here? And what does here mean in the context of what I am asking? Well, here, this horrific place we are in now, where our executive branch is nothing more than the extension of a broken, mentally unwell, nearly 80-year-old man with fascist ambitions, who has never known a real day of hardship in his entire fucking life, and who is so insecure that even when talking about the death of other people, he has to make it about himself. Here is where a truly broken man was able to hijack an entire major political party and half of our government for the purpose of boosting his own ego, seeking retribution against anyone for anything he considers a slight, which covers everything besides French kissing his ass 24/7, 365, by the way. Pissing off all of our former allies, and I say former because he has made them hate us, and he enjoys grifting his MAGA base for everything that they have. That is where here is. Just look at how Trump behaved at his own State of the Union address, lashing out at Democrats who would not stand up for him or applaud for him while giving his speech. What a poor thing. And behaving exactly like the spoiled wannabe autocrat we all know he is at heart.
It is midnight now on the East Coast. You're alive. We have all just outlasted the longest State of the Union in history. It didn't kill us. We did it. We're alive. We're sentient. Nobody can take that away from you. It itself is an accomplishment. Despite talking for more than an hour and 47 minutes, the longest State of the Union address ever in U.S. history, and by far, President Donald Trump offered very little in the way of policy. If you were like me, you might have even missed what was maybe the main thing he offered. Thankfully, Lawrence O'Donnell was able to get in there and dig it out of the speech and then succinctly nut it up as trading in the income tax for tariffs, LOL. This was not a State of the Union that will be remembered for presidential proposals. In addition to the weird sort of digressions and no policy, it may be remembered just for his awkward verbal cul-de-sacs, like this one about his dad.
Think of it, in recorded history, the lowest number in over 125 years, year 1900. In fact, substantially before my wonderful father, I had a wonderful father, Fred, before he was born. Substantially before he was born. That's a long time ago. He wouldn't like me to say that, but that's a long time ago.
So there was stuff like that. The president also shouting a lot through a lot of his speech, a number of times in ways that stretched the capacity of his microphone to handle it. There were many also long, sort of gruesome descriptions of violent deaths and injuries, which he seemed to relish describing in detail with a lot of ad-libbing. There were also his repeated attacks on Democratic lawmakers in the chamber, screaming at one point loudly that they were crazy.
Isn't that a shame? You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself. That is why I'm also asking you to end deadly sanctuary cities.
Tonight's address may ultimately be remembered for the indelible image of Democratic Congressman Al Green silently holding up a sign in the House chamber that said, "Black people aren't apes." A reference to Trump posting a video recently on social media depicting former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama as apes.
We are here because most people in our country pay little to no attention to news and current events. They do not care about what's going on in Congress or what is happening in the country and around the world. They do not care about world history. They do not care about American history. And they're not interested in our past, how it intersects with our present, or how any of that affects our collective future.
What are your thoughts on gay marriage?
I'm against it.
Yeah?
Yep.
And why is that?
Because of my religious belief.
And what religion are you?
I'm a Lutheran.
Lutheran. Because in the Bible, Leviticus, if a man lays with a man as he lays with a woman, surely he should be put to death. It's against it there?
Yep.
Also in Leviticus, it says you can't eat pork. Have you ever eaten pork?
A lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is that?
That's best president of the United States.
All right, that's Donald Trump with his mugshot, right? It says never surrender.
Never surrender.
Okay, that is a picture of him surrendering to Georgia authorities, though, right?
Sure. He's the best president of America.
Okay, but that literally is a picture of him surrendering, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you think the Bible should be taught in schools?
Yes.
Yeah?
Most definitely. Because
Yeah.
children have gotten away from that, because they have. And it needs to be put back in all the schools, Catholic schools and public schools.
So you want the Bible back in school. Do you think there are books that should be banned from schools?
Yeah, of course. You don't want pornography, which is what the agenda is these days, is to put pornography into our schools. That is gravely.
There is a book that has a story of two daughters getting their father drunk and having sex with them. Would you want that in a school?
No, absolutely. Of course not. Of course not.
No.
That's outrageous.
That's the devil's work. We don't want the devil's work in school.
Well, there you have it. Talk to some people who want the Bible taught in school, but also want the Bible banned in school. So,
and no gun-free zones.
Okay, so more guns.
Yep. Can't fight fire with water. You got to fight fire with fire.
You can't fight fire with water?
Yeah. Depends on what's in the fire.
They specifically do fight fire with water.
Yeah.
Are you a big fan of drag?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Yep. All the time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Are you okay with kids going to drags?
I've taken mine. Not youngsters.
Oh, okay.
But you ever been there?
Have you? Are you upset about all these anti-drag laws?
Not drag. Not that kind of drag.
Oh.
Race cars.
Oh.
I hate that. I hit those people.
You hate those people?
I said I want to hit them.
Why?
Knock sense in them.
Dead voters, they can't vote.
Right. How come there hasn't been any evidence supporting that?
Well, they all want to sweep it under the rug because somebody come out and spoke their mind.
Right. His own attorney general said there was no widespread voter fraud that would have influenced the election. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't have no thoughts.
Okay.
Oh, what brought you here today?
My boss is here, so I'd come to see him.
Who's your boss?
President Trump.
He's your boss?
Pretty much. He's all of our bosses.
In what way? That he tells you what to do?
He don't tell me what to do. He runs the country in a good way that nobody else can. So I consider him my boss because basically they run this country like a business.
Does it bother you that he ran a lot of his businesses into bankruptcy, though?
No, it don't bother me at all. No, it don't bother me at all. I don't care if he...
But if he runs the country like a business, he could like bankrupt it.
I don't care if he was smoking crack with Hunter. I don't care. I'm going to vote for him. I don't care what happens. I'm voting for him.
Even if he was smoking crack with Hunter Biden?
Hell yes, I would.
You know, a kid died at a drag race in Texas about 5 years ago.
What happened?
There was a crash.
Oh, okay. Well,
so as far as I know, a child has never died at a drag queen show.
Well,
Protecting kids.
They might later. I'm telling you.
Okay.
Do those people look informed to you? These types of people are only interested in literally anything, insofar as it directly affects their immediate lives. Trump is a reflection of this lack of information or interest. We all like to exclusively blame Trump, me included. I admit it. But the reality is that the voters, going all the way back to 2016 in the Republican primary and the general election win against Clinton, the voters are why we are here. We get the government that we vote for or that we don't vote for. And I'm talking to you, all of those who keep sitting out these elections. And yes, very reasonable arguments can be made that Bernie would have been a better matchup against Trump. The Democratic Party should not have tried to anoint Clinton. And after the 2016 primary, the role of superdelegates were drastically reduced for future Democratic primaries as a corrective measure. Still, Trump is the reflection in the mirror. And healthy democracies do not and would not elect someone like Donald Trump even once. 2016 Electoral College asterisk aside, much less twice, especially not after January 6th. Had the vast majority of voters been paying attention, they would have never trusted a con man like Trump. They would have known that he was completely full of shit and a true snake oil salesman from the very beginning. They would have known that this administration was always going to be like this if given a second chance. Those of us who were paying attention and warning everyone leading up to the 2024 election all knew it. You know who you are. We know who we are. We were begging people to take this shit seriously and to help create a bulwark against the possibility of a second Trump term. And we all failed. But the fight isn't over by a long shot. That said, and this is important, we can't defeat Republicans this fall and in 2028 if a large percentage of the electorate doesn't even see what's going on out there in the country and the type of fascist shit that has already happened and is still happening, particularly in places like Minnesota. Democracy requires engagement. It requires being informed and a serious commitment to keeping up with the basic issues facing the country, and how we deal with them affects us at home as well as the world at large. It is more than a little tragic that it takes multiple innocent Americans getting executed in broad daylight, recorded on many smartphones and shared around the internet almost immediately as video evidence, before people en masse start to wake the fuck up and realize just how authoritarian Trump really actually is, and how excited his sycophantic administration is to carry out this absolutely lawless behavior. I'm talking about cabinet officials like wannabe Ice Barbie and puppy killer Kristi Noem. I'm talking about Pam Bondi, the most unhinged attorney general that we've ever had. I'm talking about former drunk and weekend daytime Fox News host Pentagon Pete Hegseth. I'm talking about our absolutely bizarre HHS secretary, R.F. Kennedy Jr., who is only a Kennedy in name and who has been rightly ostracized from the rest of the extended Kennedy family for being a crazy person. He is the polar opposite of his father and uncle, eats roadkill, works out and swims in polluted rivers in his blue jeans, doesn't believe in germs because he used to snort cocaine off of toilet seats, and he's using gut feeling to dictate HHS policy. And if you don't know what HHS is, it's Health and Human Services. And the funny thing about this to me, in his admission of snorting cocaine off of toilet seats, is just how far we fucking come. 30 years ago, Bill Clinton, with his trying out weed but not even inhaling, I let it in, but I didn't actually inhale it. He had to lie about that because the American people weren't ready for it. And here we have RFK Jr. ripping lines of cocaine off of toilet seats. No one even gives a shit. It's not even in the news.
I mean, for me, you know what, I said this when we came in, and I said, I don't care what happens, I'm going to a meeting every day.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not scared of a germ. You know, I used to snort cocaine off of toilet seats. And I know this disease will kill me.
Right.
Like if I don't treat it, which means going to meetings every day.
Cool. So glad he's in charge of our health and human services. These unqualified clowns are nothing more than pawns helping Trump to weaponize the various departments and agencies across the executive branch against the will of the majority of the American people, violating their rights and putting us all at public health risk by following right-wing Maha manosphere pseudoscience. And of course, Republican senators and House members haven't told any of these cabinet secretaries to take a hike. Republicans can never be trusted when it counts. Not even with Howard Lutnick going and hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein on his island after he lied about it. They could give a fuck about any of that. It's impossible to walk the tightrope of going along with every bananas thing that Trump says or does and then turn around and be a critical thinker who operates based in reality. These two ways of being are completely at odds with each other, and so Republicans can either choose to be pathetic Trump lickspittles, or they can choose to be their own person and a member of Congress with their own voice, like Thomas Massie is now, and formerly Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, and Mitt Romney, as a few examples. This rubber stamp of a Republican-controlled Senate confirmed Trump's cabinet because the Republican senators care more about their jobs and their party than they do about their country. That's just a basic fact of reality here. The same can be said for a very small group of Democrats from time to time, but it's the exception, not the rule. Whereas for Republicans in the age of Trump, it is exclusively the rule. It's party over country always. It is by default the way they all operate. The fact that so many Republican members of Congress all secretly talk shit about Trump behind his back while kissing his ass in public with insane levels of enthusiasm and backing his nutjob foreign policy ambitions like annexing Greenland and starting a war with NATO is just one of the many serious problems that have brought us to this point.
Mr. Smith, I want you to have the utmost confidence in what you did. You did everything right. Harry Dunn, Danny Hodges, Sergeant Cannell, Mike Fanone, they did everything right. These guys, my Republican colleagues, are a joke. They're wrong. History will harshly judge them. So I want you to lean in today. You have nothing to be ashamed of. You did everything right, sir. And these guys are so lucky they're not under oath, because they would have to tell you what they really think of Trump. They call him crooked. They call him cruel. They call him a scumbag. I've heard you all say it. You're lucky you're not under Trump, but when the lights go on and the cameras are on, you're tiny, you're small, you shrink. Everyone remembers Matt Gaetz coming over here after a committee hearing. He would laugh at how stupid he thought Trump was. This is all a show. And Mr. Smith, you're just the latest act that they've brought in.
Democrats simply cannot fight this fight alone. You saw the way that Pam Bondi behaved in front of Congress last week, and the reason she was able to get away with acting like that is because the only Republican actually performing any actual oversight with her was Thomas Massie. Someone with whom I disagree almost across the board on policy, but who stands up for what he has said for years that he believed in, and he is sticking it to other Republicans over the Epstein files. We need so much more of that from the Republican Party. Massie cannot do it alone. It is not how our government is designed to work, and we need Congress to use and protect its Article I powers that are specifically for the House and Senate to use to perform oversight and to control the power of the purse, aka the budget, and how all money is allocated and spent by the federal government. Usually agreed upon and approved on an annual basis, though some projects that need multi-year funding can be allocated money for multiple years in one annual budget bill. There were no real American political parties when the country was founded, and the Founding Fathers could not have conceived of the idea that the legislative branch would be so willing to hand over its power to the executive branch if the party in Congress also controlled the White House. Whether operating as the majority or the minority party in Congress, the Democratic Party needs a true partner in sane Republicans. If there are any left, which I highly doubt, and it will sure as fuck take more than Thomas Massie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind me, I have 3 documents from the DOJ production that are emblematic of the massive failure of the DOJ to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. To my right is an email that was sent by the victims' lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to redact, a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known. And we know you touched the document because you redacted one name and you redacted the lawyer's name, but you left the survivor's name there. The next document I want to show you, that was in the title, the victims' survivors' names, all right? The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking, Co-Conspirators, fully redacted. And by the way, I'm going to unredact them here. Les Wexner is in this. Now, your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files, but he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking, not to prostitution, not to money laundering, child sex trafficking. So I have several questions for you. Who's responsible? Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document? Do you have that kind of accountability?
We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to answer this question.
Reclaiming my time.
Mr.
Chairman.
This is how this works.
Can I have my time back?
Mr.
Chairman.
The gentlelady can give her answer.
Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
where
of
he's
over
listed as a co-conspirator.
And we invited you
in.
This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician.
Gentlemen,
You need to get on
you to watch
these
the
matters.
video.
Chairman, please restore his time and
Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I am reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim
because
time
this
when
is
you don't,
bigger than Watergate.
When I don't answer a question the way
This
you
goes
want.
over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
Here's a perfect example. When Nixon announced his resignation on August 8th of 1974, it was not because Democrats were warning that they were going to impeach and convict him. That was a given. No, it was because the vast majority of Republicans in Congress were also going to impeach and remove Nixon. That is what forced him to resign. After all, Republicans back then were actually legitimately putting the country over their own political party, something modern Republicans wouldn't know a fucking thing about. Specifically, on August 7th, 1974, Senator Barry Goldwater, the Republican from Arizona who had previously run 10 years prior in the general election for president in 1964 as the Republican nominee, went to Nixon. Goldwater had been blown out by incumbent Lyndon Johnson, and he ended up only winning 6 states and only 38.5% of the popular vote against LBJ in 64. But that same Goldwater, who put country over party, alongside Senate Minority Leader Hugh Scott and House Minority Leader John Rhodes, also both Republicans, important, told President Richard Nixon that his support in Congress had basically evaporated and that he would face certain impeachment and removal from office. This pivotal meeting made it clear to Nixon that he lacked the Republican votes for an acquittal in the Senate and that they were 100% going to remove him from office. This happened one day before he announced his resignation. One day.
I worked for Richard Nixon. And I want you to understand that the Nixon impeachment never took place because in the end, the Republicans made the decision. Barry Goldwater, John Rhodes, and Hugh Scott went down to the White House on August 7th, 1974, and essentially told the president he did not have the votes to survive. The legal issue of whether the president, in fact, had committed a high crime or misdemeanor was not debated. The president turned to Barry Goldwater and he said, "Barry, how many votes do I have in the Senate?" And Barry Goldwater, by the way, told me the story himself. And Goldwater said to me that I responded to the president, "You have 6 votes at most, and I am not one of them." So in the end, Richard Nixon resigned because he knew, as he put it in the David Frost interviews, that he had impeached himself. And I want to point something out that most people don't realize, Bob. Richard Nixon did not order the Watergate break-in. Richard Nixon's crime was the cover-up. The cover-up is what caught Richard Nixon. And had Nixon remained silent, had he not embarked on a cover-up, he would not have been removed from office. Nixon could not survive because the political support that he had, the Republicans, collapsed completely. And so what we learn is, and it's an important point quickly, that whether it's the impeachment of Andrew Johnson, the impeachment which theoretically would have taken place with Richard Nixon, or Bill Clinton, or now Donald Trump, these are political proceedings. And let me remind, Bob, let me remind you and all of our listeners that no president of the United States facing trial in the United States Senate has been convicted and removed from office.
Goldwater had informed Nixon that there was basically no way that Nixon would get the necessary votes for acquittal in the Senate, likely less than 15, which would mean that the Senate would blow past the 2/3 majority threshold required for a conviction and removal from office, which is 67 out of 100. Obviously, going out like that was something Nixon wanted to avoid in order to save at least some face, because he felt that being removed from Congress would be even more embarrassing and humiliating than resigning from office himself. As a result, Nixon announced his resignation on August 8, 1974, effective the next day. The meeting is famously recognized as the turning point that directly led to the first, and to date, as of February 2026 anyway, the only resignation of a U.S. president. Now, can you even try to imagine the Senate standing up to Trump like this today? With this Senate? Without your entire fucking mind exploding into an absolute black hole of cosmic madness? Even right after Trump tried to literally overthrow the 2020 election to stay in power, even after the horror at our nation's capital on January 6th, 2021, with many of these same congressmen and women running for their lives from the supporters of a man who is the head of their own party. Even after multiple Capitol police officers died, so much for backing the blue when it counts. Even after Trump helped orchestrate a fake electors scheme. And even after Trump called state officials in places like Georgia to help him find some votes so he could overturn the Electoral College vote in that state. Even after all of that, we were only able to get 10 Republican members of the House from a congressional body that has 435 fucking members. And we were only able to get 7 Republican senators from a Senate body with 100 members to cross the aisle and do the moral sane thing, which was to convict Trump in his second impeachment trial, ensuring that he could never run for federal office again, ensuring that he would lose his presidential pension, his staff, and his Secret Service protection. We could have stripped Trump of everything he holds most dear, paid for by taxpayers. And we could have ensured that justice would be applied. And it needed to be applied. Because in such a scenario, he could never run for president again with the intent and ability to run out the legal clock on his crimes. And he could never use the presidency for retribution and personal fortune. We could have done all of that, but we only got 17 members of Congress on the Republican side across 2 chambers. That's it. 17. 10 in the House, 7 in the Senate.
We've just been through quite a week in Washington, followed by quite a day yesterday. A rare Saturday session of the Senate in which former President Donald Trump was acquitted after a historic second impeachment trial.
Is not guilty as charged in the article of impeachment.
The vote was 57 guilty, 43 not guilty, short of the 2/3 majority required. Here's Major Garrett to sum things up.
The yeas are 57. The nays are 43. The final vote on acquittal came 10 votes short of the 67 required to convict former President Donald Trump of inciting the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
That assault by flag-waving armed Trump supporters came shortly after the president spoke and followed months of him spewing the so-called big lie that he had been fraudulently denied re-election. Democratic impeachment manager Joe Neguse of Colorado.
Because he assembled the mob, he summoned the mob, and he incited the mob.
Mr. Burr, guilty.
7 Republicans voted to convict, not among them Kentucky's Mitch McConnell. Yet the Senate Minority Leader later excoriated Mr. Trump's election fraud lies and the violence that he said flowed from them.
There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day.
And yes, again, the Democrats are not perfect. And I have my issues with the Democratic Party for sure. But almost all Democrats are trying to do the right thing, operate within the bounds of the law, and are truly looking out for their constituents. But unfortunately, they have absolutely no good faith partner on the other side of the aisle to work with, because today's Republicans are essentially part of a personality cult and living in an alternate reality. These Republicans also have absolutely no willingness or interest in applying the rule of law equally and blindly, and are completely complicit in Trump's weaponization of the Justice Department. The whole reason Lady Justice is blindfolded is to demonstrate that justice is impartial and that seeking justice through our legal system is a great responsibility that should and must exclusively be based on the facts, nothing else. And so that no party, no person, no organization or group of people can put their thumb on the scale of justice in an attempt to corruptly select how said justice is applied. This rubber stamp masquerading as a Congress, a body that is supposed to be the legislative branch and a co-equal federal branch of our government, should be properly exercising its Article 1 authority. But because Republicans control both chambers of Congress, they are all in on the cult and their dear leader. Democrats need to understand that they cannot count on Republicans for anything, not even policies that would help Trump's own supporters, like federal subsidies for insurance on the ACA exchange, for example. This is where we are now. This is where we are, and MAGA does not give a shit about our institutions or having 3 co-equal branches of government. They do not care about the rule of law unless they can use it to bribe, extort, or coerce people. It should be obvious that they are hypocrites on basically everything, even the First and Second Amendments. They definitely don't give a shit about the rest of the Constitution. They want the president to basically be a dictator. They want to nationalize our elections, and they only care about control and power. We fucking warned everyone that if Trump was elected again, it might be our last election. But the country didn't listen, and now we may actually have to fight for our right to have free and fair elections in this country going forward.
In a podcast interview with his former FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino, President Trump turned heads with this.
The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting.
Given that the Constitution dictates elections be run by the states, the president's comments triggered Democratic outrage.
I don't see this as a distraction. I see it as an actual threat. He has said out loud what he wants to do.
And polite pushback from top Republicans.
It's always been the responsibility of the states to administer elections.
I want to see elections be honest.
President Trump pressed late today, insisting there are problems with elections in multiple states.
Horrible corruption on elections, and the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved.
It comes amid growing alarm among Democrats following last week's FBI raid of a Fulton County, Georgia election center. The FBI seizing hundreds of boxes of ballots and other documents related to the 2020 election, which the president has repeatedly and falsely claimed was stolen. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard observed the raid and later facilitated a call in which President Trump spoke directly to FBI agents involved in the search, two sources say.
She has no role in executing search warrants, and she does not belong on the scene of a domestic FBI search, particularly one tied to the president's personal grievances carried out under the pretense of normal law enforcement.
Garrett joins us tonight from the White House. But Garrett, I know you're tracking some news from Capitol Hill. The president also signed a bill to end another short-lived government shutdown today.
That's right, Tom. This bill fully funds the federal government through the end of September, except for the Department of Homeland Security. DHS is given just 2 weeks of funding, which creates a new deadline for negotiations to address Democratic demands for reforms in ICE and Border Patrol operations around the country. Tom?
Let's get something very clear. As the video pointed out, the Constitution requires that the states administer their own elections. Trump only thinks that any state which didn't vote for him must be stolen because he is an insecure man-baby who I cannot fucking believe my country voted for twice. This is your moment, Republicans. This is your moment to show us that you are not completely full of shit. Be like Goldwater. Be like the Republicans of the past who were willing to tell the head of their own party that he fucked up and had to go for something much smaller than what we're dealing with here. History will remember you for what you did or didn't do during this period. And once Trump is gone, it'll be too late to make up for it. You can count on that. I leave you all with this call to action from another Republican with whom I disagree on basically everything from a policy standpoint, but who was willing to give up everything she had earned in her career in Republican politics because she put the country over party. I urge you all to do the same.
There's a reason why people serving in our government take an oath to the Constitution. As our founding fathers recognized, democracy is fragile. People in positions of public trust are duty-bound to defend it, to step forward when action is required. In our country, we don't swear an oath to an individual or a political party. We take our oath to defend the United States Constitution. And that oath must mean something. Tonight, I say this to my Republican colleagues who are defending the indefensible. There will come a day when Donald Trump is gone, but your dishonor will remain. Finally, I ask all of our fellow Americans, as you watch our hearings over the coming weeks, please remember what's at stake. Remember the men and women who have fought and died so that we can live under the rule of law, not the rule of men. I ask you to think of the scene in our Capitol Rotunda on the night of January 6th. There, in a sacred space in our constitutional republic, the place where our presidents lie in state, watched over by statues of Washington and Jefferson, Lincoln and Grant, Eisenhower, Ford, and Reagan. Against every wall that night encircling the room, there were SWAT teams, men and women in tactical gear with long guns, deployed inside our Capitol building. There in the rotunda, these brave men and women rested beneath paintings depicting the earliest scenes of our republic, including one painted in 1824 depicting George Washington resigning his commission, voluntarily relinquishing power, handing control of the Continental Army back to Congress. With this noble act, Washington set the indispensable example of the peaceful transfer of power, what President Reagan called nothing less than a miracle. The sacred obligation to defend this peaceful transfer of power has been honored by every American president, except one. As Americans, we all have a duty to ensure that what happened on January 6th never happens again, to set aside partisan battles, to stand together to perpetuate and preserve our great republic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think that says it all for now. I don't often agree with traditional Republicans, but when I do, it looks like that. I've been your host, Ken Thompson. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time on the Mad Mod Pod.